On a hill in Turkey stands a temple older than the Egyptian pyramids by 7,000 years. It was built by people who, by every textbook, didn't yet know how to build anything at all. No farming, no writing, not even a clay pot. In medieval Constantinople, a weapon burned that water couldn't put out. It incinerated whole fleets, and then its recipe vanished from the face of the earth so cleanly that the best chemists on the planet still can't reconstruct it. And in the desert of Peru, drawings the size of a city are etched into the ground, and you can only see them whole from the height of a bird, where their creators never once flew. All of these things exist. You could buy a ticket and stand in front of any of them tomorrow. Let's start with the mystery that calls the whole history of civilization into question. 1. Göbekli Tepe, a temple built by people who shouldn't have known how. In southeastern Turkey, there's a hill the locals called for centuries just Potbelly Hill. Beneath it, as the 1990s revealed, lay something that demolished the comfortable picture of how civilization began, the one taught in every university on Earth. Stone circles of massive T-shaped pillars, some several meters tall and weighing up to 20 tons, carved with foxes, boars, snakes, birds of prey, by a hand that knew exactly what it was doing. Genuine monumental architecture, around 12,000 years old. That's 7,000 years older than Stonehenge, 7,000 older than the pyramids. When the pyramids were built, Göbekli Tepe was already more ancient to the Egyptians than the pyramids are to us. And now the part that puts a chill down your spine. 12,000 years ago there was no farming, no cities, no pottery, no writing, no metal. Just wandering hunter-gatherers in tiny bands. And there was an iron rule, treated almost as a law of nature. First, humans master farming. It yields surplus food, settlement, hierarchy, and only then, thousands of years later, does a fed society find the strength for temples. First, the farm, then the sanctuary, always in that order. Göbekli Tepe turns that order on its head. The temple came before the farm. And here's the science-admitted question with no answer to this day. How did a society with no farming, no settlements, no chiefs, and no state organize hundreds of people for a project spanning generations? Who fed them while they carved 20-ton pillars? The discoverer himself thought maybe the need to gather at the temple is what drove people to settle and invent farming. The spiritual outran the material. There's still no single answer. And one more detail. This one purely unsettling. At some point, Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried under earth. They entombed their own temple. By hand. People we pictured as savages with clubs, who turned out to command organization, mathematics, faith, and power over hundreds. Why build it over generations, then bury it? Unknown. They took the answer with them. 2. The Antikythera Mechanism, a genius that vanished without a trace. In 1901, sponge divers pulled a heap of corroded bronze off a sunken Roman ship near the Greek island of Antikythera. Nobody paid attention. There were marble statues nearby, real treasure. And then, later, in one of the fragments, someone spotted what couldn't be there: a neatly cut, toothed gear. The shipwreck dates to around the 1st century BC. Inside, by CT scan, are around 30 bronze gears in a flat, multi-layered mechanism. You set the date, turn a handle, and it shows the sun and moon, the lunar phase, predicts eclipses decades ahead, tracks the cycles of the Olympic Games. A model of the cosmos that fits in a shoebox. And here it's important to be precise. The mystery isn't how it works. That's been worked out to the last tooth. The mystery is this: The next device of comparable complexity isn't built for about another 1,500 years, near the age of mechanical clocks.
Between this bronze box and its repeat lies a chasm of 16 centuries, with nothing even close. Cicero mentions a similar device attributed to Archimedes, so the tradition existed. This wasn't a lone miracle, but in over a century of digging, exactly one example has reached us. And here's the uncomfortable question you can't wave away. How could a skill of this level arise, reach perfection, and vanish so cleanly that not one intermediate example survives? No diagram, no apprentices, no second copy. A whole school of engineering flared up and went out without a trace. Remember this question. It's the spine of the whole video. If this is possible once, what stops it happening again and again in a history we have no finds from? Knowledge, it turns out, is mortal. A civilization can know and then forget. And that's not speculation. It's a documented fact lying under glass in Athens. 3. The Serapeum at Saqqara. 100-ton boxes in a corridor they can't fit through. Beneath the sands of Saqqara are underground galleries cut into the bedrock, running into darkness for hundreds of feet. In the side niches stand about 24 granite sarcophagi. Each is enormous, around 13 feet long, over 10 tall, 70 to 100 tons, plus a lid of about 30. One box with its lid heavier than a loaded railway car. They're traditionally linked to burials of sacred bulls, though when opened, they were empty. And here I'll separate the real mystery from the inflated one, because there's a lot of noise around this place, and you deserve honesty. You'll hear about machining to CNC precision, about perfect angles measured by engineers. Plainly, those claims come mostly from enthusiasts and haven't passed strict scientific checking. Interpretation, not established fact. But here's what matters. Drop the inflated part, and the mystery doesn't disappear. Underneath it is another one, real, that historians admit openly. Logistics. The passages are so narrow that two people can't pass, and the gap between a sarcophagus and its niche wall is, in places, a matter of inches. No room to wedge a lever, no room to place a worker to push. How did they bring a 100-ton box into a corridor barely wider than itself, turn it on a right angle, lower it below floor level, and cap it with a 30-ton lid, with no cranes and no room to even apply force? There are hypotheses: sand packed and slowly removed, wooden sledges, clearing in stages, but none is proven well enough to close the debate. And notice, the giants or aliens version makes it worse, not better. A huge being would have it harder in that corridor, where there's barely room for a normal person. The tightness proves it was built for ordinary-sized people who solved an engineering problem we, with all our cranes, still can't confidently repeat. So how do you think they lowered them in? Engineers have lost sleep over this place, so there's no stupid theory here. Drop yours in the comments. I read them and argue back with pleasure. 4. Greek fire. A weapon whose recipe humanity lost forever. The Byzantine Empire in the 7th century AD used a weapon history remembers as Greek fire. A combustible mixture was sprayed under pressure through bronze siphon tubes from ships onto the enemy fleet. The liquid flame, by eyewitness accounts, didn't go out on water. By some descriptions, water only fed it. Picture a sea engulfed in a fire you can't put out with that same sea. Several times it saved Constantinople, burning entire Arab fleets to the waterline. And here's what sets this mystery apart. There's no doubt about anything factual. The weapon existed, worked, and changed the outcome of sea battles. It's described in detail in the sources. The mystery is the recipe.
It was kept as a strict state secret, passed hand to hand within a narrow circle, never fully trusted to paper. And it was guarded so well that in the end, it was lost completely. The keepers of the knowledge died, and the formula died with them. To this day, historians and chemists argue over what was in it. Crude oil, resins, sulfur, quicklime. What thickener? In what proportion? How did the siphon hold pressure without blowing up in the Byzantines' own hands? And here's the thought that genuinely unsettles. A technology can be lost not to catastrophe or invasion or a library fire, but simply because it was guarded too well, and guarded to death. Knowledge is sometimes killed not by flame, but by secrecy. 5. The Roman Dodecahedron. 100 objects and not one word about why. This one I consider the cleanest mystery in the whole list, because here science throws up its hands completely openly, with no caveats.
Picture a bronze object the size of your fist, hollow, 12-sided, each face with a round hole of a different diameter, each corner with a small knob. This is the Roman dodecahedron. Over 100 have been found, from Hadrian's Wall in Britain to Hungary. Dated to the 2nd through 4th centuries AD, and now the thing that makes them a perfect, almost mocking mystery. The Romans were obsessed with documentation. The army, kitchen recipes, laws, engineering, the tiniest details of daily life. Mountains of their texts survive. But about these objects, not a single mention. Not one text, not one painting, not one mosaic. No name, no instructions, not even a passing hint. Over 100 complex bronze items, and a ringing silence. More than 50 theories have been offered. Measuring device, rangefinder, candlestick, gaming die, a tool for knitting gloves, a ritual object. None holds up. They turn up in women's graves and men's. In coin hoards and rubbish pits, the sizes and holes different every time. Archaeologists say it plainly. There is no ancient source explaining these things, so every theory is a guess that can't be proved or disproved. And there's something almost eerie in that silence. A whole people made these objects, held them, used them for something, and despite their love of records, left not one line about them. Even a literate, meticulous civilization can have huge chunks of daily life vanish completely. So what about the ones who didn't write at all? 6. The Nazca Lines. Drawings for someone who looks down from above. In the desert of southern Peru, across hundreds of square kilometers, giant geoglyphs are etched. Straight lines running for miles, geometric figures, and enormous images. A hummingbird, a monkey, a spider, a whale.
The Nazca culture made them around 2,000 years ago by scraping off the dark top layer of stones to expose the pale ground beneath. The dry, windless climate preserved them, almost untouched, for millennia. And here again I'll separate how from why. The how, science has broadly explained. Figures like these can be built with simple tools, stakes and cords, scaling up by proportion, and archaeologists have found wooden stakes at the ends of lines. No aerial technology required. But the why remains a matter of honest scientific debate to this day. Because here's the strangeness. Almost none of these drawings can be made out from the ground. Whole, they read only from the air, from a bird's height. And their creators didn't fly and, in principle, could never see the result of their colossal labor whole, not once in their lives. Why spend years of a whole people's effort on an image you can't take in with your own eyes? Who was it drawn for?
There are theories. Ritual paths walked in procession, appeals to the gods for water in that parched land, astronomical and calendar markers. Each explains something, and none closes the question. And that strangeness, colossal labor for a viewer who couldn't be a person on the ground, makes Nazca genuinely unsettling. Here we don't run into a lack of technology. We run into a different way of thinking, categories we don't fully grasp, and that, maybe, is the deepest gulf of all. It's easier to understand a stranger's hands than a stranger's soul. 7. The stone spheres of Costa Rica. Perfect spheres from the jungle. In the river deltas and jungles of Costa Rica in the early 20th century, workers clearing land for banana plantations began finding strange objects, stone spheres. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. From the size of a tennis ball to huge masses over 6 feet across, weighing many tons, and almost perfectly spherical. They were made, by estimate, by a pre-Columbian culture around 1 to 1,500 years ago, carved from hard stone. And here are two honestly open questions. First, the precision of the form. Achieving a near-perfect sphere by hand with simple stone tools is agonizingly hard. And how the makers held that accuracy isn't fully clear. But the second question is the main one, and it's bitterer than the first. Why? And here I have to tell an unpleasant truth, not about the ancients, but about us. Many of the spheres originally stood in groups, arranged in lines and complex geometric patterns. But a large part of them were moved before scientists ever reached them. They were dragged off to lawns and plazas. Some were blown apart because a rumor spread that gold was hidden inside. And along with the sphere's positions, the meaning of that arrangement was destroyed forever. Maybe it was a map, a calendar, a starry sky laid on the ground. We will never know now. This is the bitter case where part of the mystery wasn't made by ancient masters, but by us. They left us a message and we erased half the letters searching for gold that wasn't there. Sometimes we don't solve a mystery of the past, we kill it. 8. Old Kingdom Vases, vessels at the edge of the possible. In Egypt, in layers from the earliest eras back to the pre-dynastic and the Old Kingdom, thousands of stone vessels are found. And some are made of very hard rock, granite, diorite, quartzite, stones that, with copper and abrasive, are worked agonizingly slowly, millimeters an hour. And yet some of these vases are thin-walled, with a narrow neck and a wide hollow body, perfectly symmetrical, sometimes almost translucent against the light. And again I need care because there's an especially heavy load of nonsense around these. Machine precision, lasers, tolerances like aerospace. These are enthusiasts' interpretations, not strict verified measurements, and they deserve healthy skepticism. But strip away the excess, and the honest core of the mystery stays. How, while hollowing out a body through a narrow neck, do you keep a thin, even wall across a volume you can't even see with your eyes? How do you achieve that symmetry by hand in hard stone with the tools of the era? Experiments show it's possible in principle with tubular drills and abrasive, but what's honestly admitted, reproducing the best of these vessels with the same thinness of wall is something modern masters manage only with enormous difficulty. And there's no case-closing answer yet for how the finest were made. Not magic, just a level of skill we never suspected in them.
9.
The polygonal masonry of Puma Punku and Cusco. Stone fitted to stone to a hair. And we'll finish in the Andes, where stoneworking passes beyond what we can confidently explain. In Peruvian Cusco and its surroundings, and especially the Bolivian complex of Puma Punku near Tiwanaku, lies stone blocks fitted together so tightly that a knife blade won't go into the joint, and in places not even a human hair. At Puma Punku, some pieces are cut from andesite, a very hard volcanic rock with straight faces, precise inner angles, even grooves, as if worked to a single template in series like parts of one machine. And again, honestly without overreach, because you've earned it, we broadly know the methods they used. The stone was pounded and ground with stone hammers, polished with abrasive, fitted by trial. Experimental archaeology showed a tight polygonal joint can be produced that way. So alien machines aren't needed here. But the open question remains, and the engineers themselves admit it. How, with such tools, did they reach that repeatability and precision on hard andesite across many pieces, holding one standard? How did they sequence the fitting of the largest blocks? For the biggest stones, there simply isn't a detailed step-by-step reconstruction yet. We understand the principle. We don't fully understand where the people found the precision and the inhuman patience for that scale. It's not that they had a secret technology. It's that they had a quality we refused to see in them: patience, discipline, and skill before which our pride in our own machines falls silent. These 9 things aren't bound by magic or by aliens. They're bound by one point, where our explanation runs out: how they moved 100-ton sarcophagi through the tight Serapeum, why they drew Nazca for a viewer who didn't exist on the ground, where the skill to build Antikythera mechanisms and the recipe for Greek fire disappeared to. These 9 mysteries aren't proof of outside interference. They're a monument to how much the people before us could do, and how little we're used to crediting them with. Progress isn't a straight line from primitive ancestors up to us at the summit. It's a spiral, where skills flare up, reach perfection, go out, and someone rediscovers the same thing thousands of years later and proudly calls it a breakthrough. Our ancestors weren't primitive. They were different, and in many ways, they surpassed us. They had no machines, but they had what we are desperately short of: time, patience, and the will to labor toward one goal for generations without hoping to see the result in their lifetime. And here's what truly chills the spine. If entire skills vanished so completely that we're left with one fragment and 1,000 guesses, what out of everything you and I can do today will one day become an inexplicable find just like these? Picture an archaeologist 10,000 years from now turning a fragment of our world over in his hands, just as baffled, and deciding that somebody surely must have helped us. So tell me, which of the 9 gripped you the most? And where are you watching from? Drop your country and your answer in the comments. Professionals lose sleep over these exact things for a lifetime, so there are no stupid opinions here. See you next time.